3, 2, 1. Dan and I, can you tell we haven't done this together before, right? So we'll go ahead and get kicked off. So Dan, seriously, that was your kickoff to start going there. Good morning, everyone. I appreciate you guys joining us. This will be a double session today. And so we will take a break about midway through, so we all can go recharge our coffee or whatever. What we're going to do today is we are going to start off with some review. So we'll review the 990. We'll review the 990. We'll review some of the calculations around it. And then also a little bit of review on the organizational review document, because this class is moving pretty quick, especially with a double class today. We're actually gonna start probably doing some reviews. We might do a couple today. We have a couple in the house, so to speak, and so we can start to look at that. And then we'll talk about some common things that people you're going to hear or you do hear around, I'll say around fundraising or development or getting people to give, kind of common objections, and then this concept of, where does this money come from, and entitlement, and where can it go to? And then, the next session will be, a whole bunch of other stuff as well. And we'll continue to build into all of this about understanding generosity. So I'm hoping that you guys are seeing the high impact generosity slide. And so we'll go ahead and get started. So like I said, we'll start with kind of reviewing the big project, or if you will, or the big organizational review document. And I say big, this is not 15 pages or something. This is a couple of pages with information from the 990 and kind of why it's passionate to you and why you want to be involved. So again, the document itself, and you all will brief this as we kind of go through our discussion on the organizations. And so we'll have each one of you try and brief to the whole class, so everybody kind of gets a sense of what you're looking at and what you're passionate about. So again, describe the organization, its purposes. Is the organization having an impact? And try and describe that as specifically as you can. Then we'll kind of dive into, on that review, reviewing the 990, what you found there. And then finally, have you had a chance to be personally involved in this organization? And how do you expect to be involved in the future? So again, when we're briefing this all together as a class, this is really a maybe 2, 3, no more than 5 minute. Hey, here's what I found. Here's what why I'm passionate about it. Here's how they scored. And then, by the way, if you do a couple and you find one that didn't go well or didn't score well, sometimes it's like we were saying last week, it's interesting to find out what you learned from that and why they scored that way. And again, the other thing is, remember, this is just a methodology to give you a kind of a starting point to kind of lean into evaluating working with a nonprofit. So I know all of you have seen this form before. And so what I want to do is just, again, go through why some of these things are important and why they're scored the way they are. So again, program service revenue. So we'll use some of the terms that we see on the 990s. That's measures how much revenue comes from, or income comes from, selling things. So does it start to look like it's running a business model as opposed to a charity or a nonprofit? Next is highest paid salaries. And so again, is the organization appropriately using the resources that it has come in to fulfill its mission? And so it's not bad to have highly compensated employees, but we didn't go through this example last week. I think it's in your packet. We have one 990 that we looked at where there were, I think, 2 or 3 employees, husband and wife, each making over $170,000 a year. and that was a huge part of their budget. So it would kind of lead you to the question, ask the question, what's really going on there? You know, if that high a percentage of their expense goes to two people, how much money is really going out to help people in need? So the next thing that we like to look at is how much of the revenue comes from government grant funding. And again, this is not bad. We've kind of put a threshold on it that we'd like to see less than 0.6 or 60% of that of its revenue coming from government grants. And again, the reason for that is the grant process can be, as many of you know, very difficult and may not be something that's repeatable year after year. So if an organization has a huge amount of its money tied up in some specific grants, and then those grants don't show up, what happens to the people that they're serving? How do they fulfill their mission? So again, that's more of looking at a balance of how people can, how people structure their resources. Then the next one is the statement of functional expenses. So this one's a little bit more, I don't know if it's more difficult to understand or why is this important, but it basically, are they a pass-through organization? So the example I think we used last week was the United Way. So the United Way brings in a huge amount of money for a number of charities, and then it disperses that money out. In and of itself, that's not bad. But the challenge with that for a well-run organization is, again, how much of the money that comes in actually goes out to help people in need. And so again, if you think about, go back to Steve Bray's video, Giving University wants to recognize and incent organizations where they're most effectively using the resources. The most money that comes in can go out. We all understand that there's going to be overhead in an organization, but you really want to try and, again, how much of the money that comes in functionally gets out to people that are in need. And again, that goes down to that next line item, looking for a pretty low expense ratio. Less than 10% is the max score. And again, that's a pretty good indicator of a truly well-run organization. And by the way, it's really easy for it to creep up beyond that. And then finally, how much money are they spending on fundraising? Again, the downside of certain organizations is they will spend a large amount of money on fundraising to raise money that, again, that every dollar spent on fundraising is money that's not going out to people. So again, when you look at bad examples of nonprofits, you may see something where they're raising a lot of money, but they're spending a lot of money to raise it. And so, at any rate, just something to kind of keep in mind. So that's why those are the things we're using to score. And as I mentioned, this is a guide for you. It's the way GU is doing it. It doesn't mean that if an organization doesn't score well, there aren't great reasons behind that. But again, that's the kind of thing that would make us kind of dig in and learn a little bit more about what's going on.
Hey, Bill, there's a question on the chat. Excuse me.
Okay.
The question is, can you explain overhead? Shouldn't most of the income be spent somehow? I think there might have been somebody else that had a question.
Yeah, so let me come back. So overhead is the expenses that it takes to run the organization. So let's say you have an office and maybe a small office staff or an executive director. Those are all things, the way I would look at it is overhead are the expenses that it takes just to kind of run things day to day. And so it clearly, again, if $100 comes in and you have 10% overhead, $10 goes to cover that overhead, which again, it's everything like, office expenses, staff expenses, everything, cell phones, computers, everything needed to run a nonprofit today. And so again, the goal is to look to organizations that can really work to minimize that overhead expense. I think the other thing is, let's be, I'll say, real or rational about this, especially when an organization is just getting started. You may see a higher level of overhead expense just because the organization is just kind of getting into here's how we're doing fundraising, here's where we're getting our grants from. You almost have to have some of that in place before you can even go do that. By the way, it's great if an organization or individuals come in and fund it and fully fund it to begin with, but the reality is most nonprofits are going to start and build. And so again, that overhead is what it takes to actually accomplish the mission day to day. And another way to look at it is overhead expenses are those expenses that would occur whether or not any services or benefits were being provided by that nonprofit. Again, kind of the organizational stuff behind it. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
I'll assume yes. So there you go. All right. Thanks, Darren. All right. So one last thing, and then we're going to go look at a couple of 990s. I'll say the keys or some of the things to look at when looking at a 990 and looking at an organizational review. Again, we want to look at organizations that are serving people, not necessarily organizations, I'll say, serving animals. We actually foster Great Pyrenees at our house. And so picked up one yesterday from Dallas Animal Services. Work with a great organization, but it wouldn't qualify for GU because it's helping dogs, not people. We're going to be looking for an organization that's using its funds effectively. So again, that's a big part of that 990 analysis. We want you really to look at organizations that are not primarily doing pass-throughs. They may do some of that, but again, we would want to see that minimized. We want to see an organization that's not charging for stuff, more of a business model than providing services. Can receive money from government grants, but we don't want to see too high a reliance on that. And then aligns with your passion, right? So we want it to be something, and again, this goes back to, we want you guys to be focused on generosity and giving and all of that around something that gets you excited. Because as we've said before, if you're not excited about it, you're probably not going to stay engaged in it for very long. We're looking for an organization that is doing a full 990, not a 990 postcard or one of the cut down versions. And I think Dan, you said we could go up to, was it 6 million in revenue, not just 2?
60.
60. Okay, 60. 60. Okay, so something bigger than 200,000 a year. And again, going to that 60 million a year gives you a lot more flexibility. Again, we want it to be local to you and having a local impact. So any questions on again, the review of the organizational review document?
What is a pass-through organization?
So again, a pass-through organization is an organization that takes in money, and then rather than have it specifically go to people that they're serving, it would go to another organization.
Okay.
So, again, Darren, the example I used was the United Way. So they take in money and then they give it to the Red Cross, or they give it to whatever organization you actually can designate, right? But they're really almost a clearinghouse.
Investigate a nonprofit we wanted to give $1,000 to, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to go to GuideStar, which is why we want to go down the deck and have Dad walk you through this. But
January,
that's local, like Prodigy or.
Hey, and you need to mute.
And you've got to research their 990. I'm trying to see if they're legit. If they're spending money.
Oh my goodness! What?
There we go. Thank you, Dan. All right.
I was a little slow.
Well, you were faster than me. I'm sitting here floating all over the place. All right, so let's go and look at a 990. So we're gonna change what we're sharing. Bear with me a sec.
Do you want to use one of Hudson's or do you have another one, Bill?
Yeah, I'm gonna go to one of Hudson's, I think.
Hudson, are you here?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Why don't you unmute yourself because we can pick on you a little bit on this one.
All right, I'm ready.
And then Bill, which one do you want me to pull up?
How about Save Our Youth?
Okay. Hang on just a second. All right, can you see that?
We can.
Yep.
Okay. Hopefully it's somewhat big enough.
Yeah, I think so. Let's see now. I want to go to, so, you know, what we'll do is, Hudson, I'll ask you to kind of walk us through almost a mini review on this one. Tell us what you found or how you found this organization and what piqued your interest about it. And then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah,
Also-
basically save our. Go ahead.
Hang on just a second. Everybody try to get, if you have that form, put it in front of you and then maybe Hudson, as we go through it, we can let everybody score it with you. If you have
Okay.
that form, the 990 form. So that way you kind of get a practice on doing one. So go ahead, Hudson.
Yeah, let me. I'm typing in the organization here real quick. I had it on custody pause up here. Yeah, basically, I'll give you a quick overview. So, Save Our Youth is a nonprofit, right? Obviously, it's located in Denver. It's basically a mentorship program between youth and mentors. And I picked it because I'm super passionate about youth. I did Young Life growing up all the time as a mentor and as a guy that was being mentored. And I just think mentorship is some of the biggest kingdom work that you can do, especially in children. I think children, they're the most adaptable, and just a little bit of shift inside of them can really change the whole perspective or outlook of their lives. So that's why I'm super passionate about it. And then, do you want me to kind of walk through next on what I did and how I did it? Is that what
Well,
you're looking for?
let's walk through the 990 form. The
Okay.
first line on the 990 form.
Yeah,
Tell us what is the first line on the 990 form? Some people may not have the form in front of them.
You mean like the 990 analysis, like what to look for?
Yeah,
Okay.
990 analysis. That's right.
Yeah, well, basically on the 990 analysis, right, that first line, it's right there, measures how much of the revenue comes from charging for stuff. So I went to page 1, right, on the very first page. You can scroll down, and as it says, divide line 9 by line 12. So 999 is 3,600 on that. And then the total revenue was 1,247,000. And so you just take the 3,600 divided by, is it the right line? Yes. By the
Yeah,
1, 2.
you got it.
Yeah. And so, and that came out to 0.00028. So super, super small percentage, which is really good for them because that would be way below 60%. I mean, you're talking like it's a super small percentage, which is really great. Is that good enough on that? Do you want to move on to the next line?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
let's move to the next. So that gives you 3 points, right? Which is kind of the max. So that's great.
Yep. Okay, then obviously go down to page 7 and 8. And then basically count how many people are over 170,000. And really the only one that even comes close is the bottom guy, Luis Villarreal.
Okay, there we go, Dan. So, too far. So a couple of things I would also suggest to you guys. So as you see, again, 0 people, they're making over 170, which is fine. That gives you the max point. The other thing that I would suggest to you guys is that this is an organization, it's not real big, but it does have a number of people on its board and working in the organization. I think, that's kind of I think a good thing as well, because whenever you have more people working in there, you have more people, I'll say, watching, paying attention, providing not only oversight, but guidance, so that the executive director definitely feels like he has some support. So I just think that it's kind of anecdotal, but I kind of like that. So now we're going to go down to page 9, and we're going to look at how much of their revenue comes from grants, as opposed to other sources. And so again, here it looks, Hudson, you still there? We're kind of breaking up. Okay, so here, none of their revenue is coming from grants, and so again, we're going to divide line 1E, the grant line, which is 0, by line H, which is 1.161 million, and so again, well below the threshold of 60%. So again, we're going to score it for a total of 3 points.
Bill, can I ask a quick question about the way people are paid? Just to go back to that one. You don't have to go back to it on the screen. What if they have maybe 4 people and they're each getting paid $50,000? Is that a warning sign?
No, I don't think so. I think that where it could become an issue, Darren, I think is maybe more on the overhead side. So if you're paying 4 people $50,000 and you only bring in $220,000, again, you've got a huge percentage of overhead. But I think if you think about it, if you had 4 people at $170,000, then you'd want to see the size of the organization, right? Again, if you were to look at some of the really big nonprofits, that would not be a big deal. But if you see a number of highly compensated individuals and a very high overhead percentage, that's where you would get concerned. And then similarly, like your example, 4 people at 50, if that's where all the money is going in the organization, what I would say, and again, using kind of looking at it through GU glasses, is how much money is going, actually out to programs. Was a nonprofit created, this is kind of a gross way to say this, right? But was a nonprofit created to provide those 4 people jobs? Right? You want to see, because again, you want to see how much money is going out to serve the community. That's really the goal of the GU analysis, right? Doesn't mean they're not doing good things. Doesn't mean that's that their impact on the community can still be pretty dramatic. But again, this is a pretty financially driven analysis. So that's why this is important. But then I think you have to understand kind of the other things that are going on.
I did notice that like most of the ones I researched, it just had board members and then the executive director. It didn't have like employees, but that's somewhere on the thing, right?
Yeah. So that's and Dan just kind of came down to that because it's our next view, where you've got total expenses, program service expenses, et cetera. So so now we're going to, again, this is the 4th line on the 990 analysis, the statement of functional expenses. How much of their expenses are giving grants to other organizations is where we'll start with. And then we'll also do a couple other calculations here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look in column B, program service expenses. And so we're going to look at line number 1, which in this case is 0. And then we've got to go down to line 25, again, still in this second column. So 25 is a total of 915,000. So again, scores very, very well here. So we're dividing 0 by 915,000 on line 25. And again, that's the second column, column B. So again, they score 3 points. So now we're going to look at how much of their total expenses are management and overhead. And
Can I
so,
ask a question?
yeah,
I mean, I looked at probably 4 or 5 different nonprofits, and a lot of these membership dues, fundraising events, related organizations, government grants, like a lot of those are pretty much 0. Is that pretty common, or is that just like a weird fluke that I found all those?
yeah, it's not uncommon. There's a huge amount of grant money out there in the world. I'll give you some real world example or experiences that we at a couple of nonprofits that I've been a part of here in Dallas. One of them is called Bridge Builders, and they actually had a full-time grant writer to go after stuff. And
Wow.
the challenge is they honestly are a tremendous administrative burden. And most of the grant organizations are very, very specific. So, and this is important. I'm sure, Jeff could comment on this from a fundraising standpoint. Actually, he did last week. You're not going to go to somebody that's focused on education and ask them to fund a kid's food program, right? Because it's just not it's not in their wheelhouse. So the same thing here. Some of these grant requests can be, they can be very tedious. And there's a real art form to writing them. So for a smaller organization to go after a substantial grant, or even I'll say a 5-figure grant, can be a tremendous burden. So a lot of organizations won't do it unless, what you'll see sometimes is the granting organization will help them kind of get off the ground doing that, right? But so that's why you'll see a lot that don't have any grants. It's not an easy process.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on that? That's good. A good question. All right. So now we're going to look at management and overhead expenses. So we're now going to look at the third column, 25C. And so there you see our total functional expenses are 148,775. And we're going to divide that by column A, 102,082. And so you'll see there that comes out to about a 12% or 0.12 number. So they're not getting the max score here. So because they're over 10%, but they're less than 15%. So they'll score 2 points here.
I noticed a lot of the organizations I looked up, they were just above 10%, and it sucked. I was like, oh, they lost a point. Is that common?
Yeah, like I said, Darren, you'll see that's so 10% is a pretty good number. And so if you're at 11, 12, and really anything, we're saying under 15 here for the analysis. But again, I think you have to look at it, the size of the organization, the length of the service they've been in. If they're early stage, they may have a little bit of a higher overhead ratio, right? Again, 15%, is not terrible. If you were to think about it in terms of dollars here, we'd be talking, 5% of their total. We're talking another $60,000 or $70,000. So in a smaller organization, I call it the law of small numbers. It might have an outsized impact. But again, 10% is pretty much a world-class number for overhead. If you're there, if you can stay there. I think you guys might or might not remember this, but at Amazon Outreach, we were not there. We had way more of an administrative burden because of the way they were doing things. So at any rate, it's all part of it. So, all right.
And I have a question. If based on the GU analysis, if there's if you're short like a point, how it says at the bottom there, like 15, 16, unlikely to be approved, 17, 18, likely to be approved by board. If that's the point that kind of falters, would that be okay for the board, or should we just look elsewhere?
No, I mean, I think if you're on you're on the edge, and Dan, I'll ask you to comment in a sec on this. I think if you're on the edge of something and you feel passionate about it, I think you should make the pitch to the board. if you're kind of
Okay.
looking at it, and you're like, I don't know what I think about these guys. You know, if it's the old, if you're going to stand up and say, this is something I'm passionate about, look, they're a little high here. I've talked to them about this, and here's what they've told me, and I think it's a pretty good story. I think that's a good approach. You know, if you were to call them and they were like, yeah, we're not talking to you about our overhead, and you know, why do you care, and all of that, and they're not interested in having the discussion. I don't know that I'd want to stand up in front of the GU board and say, you know, this is the proverbial hill to die on, right?
Right. Okay.
So
I would say what happens on 15s and 16s is we'll ask the ones that review, the board members that review might ask for more information. And you might be a little bit like you might take the position of a lawyer trying to secure something because you really believe in it strongly. So it just gives you an idea of what's going to happen. If you turn in an 18, usually they pretty much fly through as long as, you know, the pieces are correct. Or 16 or 17 also. Anyway, Hudson, good scoring on that. I think on the one you gave me that you turned into me, you gave a little too high score on the second from the bottom one, just so you're aware.
Yeah, I'm just now realizing that.
So you have the actual right number in the calculation, but anyway, not a big deal.
yeah, so again,
Very good job by Hudson.
Yes,
Thank you,
nice
sir.
job on that. And again, that's kind of the process. You know, you go through pretty quickly on you know, that scoring piece, and then again, it's the narrative around it, right? How did you get involved? Are you going to stay involved? Why are you passionate about this? So yeah, that was nice. Does anybody else have any others they maybe want us to pull up on GuideStar and look at? And no, Darren, you don't have to have them turned in yet. Yeah. All right.
Can we look at the Colorado Children's Home?
Yeah, hold on a sec. Let me pull it up. Let's see. All right, are you guys seeing, you seen the GuideStar login now, the GuideStar page?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can see it.
Is it the Tennyson Center for Children in Colorado?
Yep, it's that one.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna come, let me, let's see. Serving children, youth, and families. So let's pull up the 990. And let me make this a little bigger so it's easier for you guys to see it.
This will be our second one we work on for the first class. And then once we're through with this one, we'll go into the class stuff. And then for the second session, we'll probably do 2 again, just to kind of give you a feel.
Yeah, very
This
good.
is going
All right.
this is going really well because you see how you get into GuideStar. You see that the forms are there, and it's just you know, it's good work on this part.
All right, so we're going to come down right into this, right on the first page here, and we're going to look at line 9, which is our program service revenue. So that's 7.66 million. And we're going to divide that by line 12, which is 12.178. So let's see. Don't make me do that in my head.
Hey, Bill, wouldn't we do the current year instead of the prior year?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. It's already been a long morning. Good call, Jason. Sorry. I'm probably, now I've confused everybody, right? So 8.473. 8.473 divided by 14,630. Yeah, I did that wrong. Bear with me a sec. So it comes out to about, let's see, 50, almost 52%. So that would score us at 3 points. Everybody tracking there? All right, so now let's come down the line, page 7 and 8. Try not to get vertigo as I'm flying through this here. All right, here's page 7. So bunch of board members again. Bunch of board members. And okay, this gentleman, Ed Breslin, is the CEO and president. They've got a COO and then CPO. So, and again, from the looks of it, we have, again, 0 that are at 170 or higher. So we're going to give them the full 3 points for that.
Hey, Bill, stay on there real quick.
Yep.
On line 1D, on your sheet there, there's a little note in there. I want to make sure you see that. On line 1D, on this form, it's 514,000. There might be more data at the back of the 990. So sometimes if you don't see something here, you might have to go a little deeper. And it's not very often it happens, but that's a number that kind of gives, I think it's total salaries. And so if you see nothing up there, there might be something at the end of the tax return. Anyway, it's noted on there, so just kind of a heads up. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, and wait, Dan, if I'm remembering this properly, that's a really good point. So this one, because we don't have, if you look at line 1C, there's continuation sheets at the back. That's what Dan's talking about. And there's nothing there. So that would lead me to believe that there's probably, and honestly, if you add these numbers up, it's probably about 514. So
exactly.
It would lead me to say that there's probably not like a hidden, highly compensated employee somewhere.
Yeah, it just happens every once in a while. But
Yeah.
This one looks really clean.
Yeah. So let me come down a little bit further. Now we're going to go to page 9. And we're going to look at how much of their revenue comes from grants. So here, again, we're going to divide 1E, 152,000 by line H, which is 5.4 million. And so again, even without necessarily doing the math, I mean, what does that come out to? Like maybe
It's 0.098.
yeah, like less than 1%, right?
No, it's not.
Well, no, less than 3%.
9%. I think.
No. Sorry, I'll do the math since I'm not now. 152 divided by 5452. It's 2.7%.
Okay.
And so again, well below our 60% threshold. So again, scoring real strong. So again, the value score, the score value would be three points for that as well. Look, this one's looking good. Let's get to the end of it. So now we're going to look at line 1. Questions?
I was just congratulating Tawanda. She did a good job.
Thanks.
Let's see. So now we're moving down to functional expenses. How much of their expense are giving grants to? How much of their expense is giving grants to other U.S. organizations? And again here, so we're looking at line 1B right here. So that's going to be 0. Again, out of their total, which we come down to 25B, which is 10.9 million.
Yeah, if it's a 0 in there, it's on automatic 3.
It's automatic, yeah, 3 points. So very good. Then we're going to look at management and overhead. So line 25C, so this 1.8 million divided by 25A, 13.81 million. And again, I know, let's see, it's going to be a little higher. Let's do the math here. Divided by,
I think it's about 13%.
apparently I'm not, my fingers aren't working this morning on my calculator.
Yeah, 10% would be 1.3, and it's
Yeah, 13.4, Dan, exactly.
13%.
So in this case, again, the way we're scoring it, it's still less than 15% and greater than 10%. So we'd score 2 points here. Now, finally, we're going to look at fundraising. And so fundraising expenses are column D. So that's 1.024 million divided by 13.851 million. So again, that's going to be less than 10%. So again, the score there it scores at 3. So, you know, the Colorado Children's Home scores 17 out of 18. Really, really solid score.
Yay, I'm so excited.
Very good, very good. Well, obviously you were able to get into, does it look the same as when you did it, Tawanda?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, cool, cool. Very good. Let's see, Jeff again. All right, so we're going to we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about some of the other stuff going on around generosity. So this is going to be kind of like, I'll say a right turn or a left turn, depending on the way you look at things. But we're going to talk a little bit about objections to generosity next, some of the content for today's first session. And then we'll take a little bit of a break, and then we'll hop into the next session. From the 990 analysis, did anybody have any questions, or did anything not make sense to anyone that they want to address before we shift over?
Let me say this. We jumped into this pretty quick, and the reason being is a lot of times we have a hard time getting people to finish up their grants and doing this form, and it's highly technical and it's kind of boring. So we moved a little bit of this early just to kind of bang on you a little bit to get you to do it. And so that's why we kind of jumped. In our material, it's actually further down in the classes. That's kind of why we're trying to push you a little bit on this piece.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, you know, we all get, I'll say real life kind of gets in the way, and this class goes really quick. And all of a sudden it's going to be like, oh, I need to, you know, do my presentation to the team. And, you know, we're in week 5 or 6 or something like that. And everybody's like, ooh, how do I get all that done? So keep pushing through. I mean, we looked at 2 great ones today. You guys think about this. If anybody has done one that didn't work out well, maybe we could use that as an example as we get into the, you know, again, the kind of the second half of this morning.
Yeah, in theory, on week class, people are supposed to be ready to prepare to do the sharing of these actual ones. And class 5 is only next Thursday, because we're doing class 3 and class 4 today. So we're kind of giving you a little speeded up version, but it's for a good reason. Yeah,
yeah. And so, Dan, thanks for keeping us honest on the chat, because I see that we've got a couple that we can look at the beginning of the next piece of the class. All right. So thanks for looking at 990s. We're going to look at them again a little bit later. We'll give you a little bit of a break from that. Now we're going to go back into I'll say our regularly scheduled show. Let's see, here we go. And again, hopefully now you guys are seeing that 990 project slide. All right. So a little bit more audience participation, I hope. What we want to do first is, you know, there's a lot of reasons why people give a lot of reasons as why they don't think they need to be generous, right? And so one of the things that I'd like to do is just take a couple of minutes and come up with a list of why you might think people would have a reason not to be generous. Take a couple of seconds and then let's and then I'll ask for some input.
I know. I think I mean, I have fear in giving when it comes to, you know, if you give out of generosity, not just giving, as we spoke of a couple weeks ago, you're like, what's going to happen to my finances? So sometimes it's a step of faith to give generously.
That's a good one, Dan. Other input?
I think some people are they're afraid of what people are going to do with the money. Like they want them to use it for good things, but they're afraid they may use it for bad things.
Excellent. Any others? I got a whole list, so I'll walk you through them.
I have more.
Go ahead.
The 990 is difficult for me, but this stuff is easy for me to get in my head. I think it's also, you know, if I give to one person, I'm going to need to give to everybody. Like, where do I stop? How do I know who to give to? Kind of like what Darren's saying, not as much as what they're going to do with it for me personally, but where do I stop? Like, there's so many people to give to. Right. I don't know when to, you know, who to give to correctly.
I think that's a really, really good point, Chad. I think sometimes, you know, and I think we talked about this early on. I mean, this is part of the reason why we feel like defining your passion is so important here, because we can't, you know, the needs are certainly beyond any of our individual capabilities, right? And so where do we feel like we can, again, where is our passion? And then hopefully, again, this class gives you some ideas around how to have the most impact, so you can feel good about what you're doing. But it's hard sometimes. Any others?
Lily has one in the chat.
Oh, let me look. See if I can get over to the chat.
She says some people are reluctant to give because they feel like it might be a fraudulent organization.
Yeah, that's a very good comment. And last class, or the first class, I'm sorry, Bill, I'll take this one.
Go ahead.
We had a student in South Orange County where this exact thing happened to them, where they had been taken for $120,000 or something like that. So one reason we do GU is to help weed out the fraudulent organizations. Exactly why we do this.
Yeah, so those are all great ones, and so you'll see some common themes, and you'll see some of the ones that you guys have mentioned as we go through this. You know, one objection is, you know, I barely make ends meet. I can't put food on the table. I can't even think about being generous. So fakers, and you know, this could be fear. This could be, is it being wasted? Is it fraudulent? But I see this guy in the corner every week. I think he's wearing a Rolex. Probably makes more money than I do. You know, I was working in Houston a few years ago, and commuting from Dallas. But there were people had their own corners, and of course, one of the local news agencies figured out which guys were the scammers and which guys were truly needy and homeless. And so again, we see that on the news, and we're like, well, yeah, if they go and they get into their newer looking car at the end of the day, does that mean that you know, they're faking it? You know, Darren, you said this, fear, right, or wasted money. I think you can use it for something bad. And again, the other, I guess, again, I'll say fear again. I could have looked down at my notes and been a little bit more clean on this, but you know, what about what's going on right now? Especially think about today, right? With COVID and challenges and people in a lot of industries and people losing their jobs. You know, can I be generous if I don't have a job? the government aren't the government supposed to do all this stuff for us? How can I make an impact? I'm paying a lot of taxes already. Here's another interesting one, right? Small amounts don't matter. Bill Gates can give away several $1 billion and probably not have it really impact him, right? What's my $50 going to do compared to what somebody like that can do?
What do you say to something like what the government's saying now with Mnuchin? He says that they don't want to give the, extend the unemployment benefits because they don't want people to be getting paid to stay home. Like it's making them lazy. What do you say to that?
Well, you know what? We're in the second part of this, Darren, we're going to talk a little bit about this concept of entitlement. It is, so certain, I don't know that I think the American culture is necessarily lazy. There are certain cultures overseas where, there is an element, we would call it lazy, but it's just culturally the way people have grown up and done things. I think that the whole additional benefit thing, I don't know really what to make of it, because I do know, I know a couple people in restaurants here in Dallas, and they were actually having trouble getting people to come back to work when they started opening stuff up, because they literally made more money by not working. So I don't know if you make, if I'm looking to maximize my income, I believe we are called to work. I believe we need to do that. Just it's good for our brains and our bodies and all that stuff, right? But if I make more money by staying at home, should I give that up, right? And I think that's a hard place for people to be, especially again, people who are in the service industry, and you know what, you're not guaranteed that paycheck. So I don't know, I don't really know what to think about it long term, but I think it's it's definitely a challenge. I'm sorry, I'm probably not doing a good job of answering that, because I don't really know what to say about it, I don't trust charities. There are too many crooks. I work hard to earn my money. I want to keep it for myself. Oh, and then here, by the way, Darren, here you go. I don't want to give it away because I'll become entitled, right? So we're going to talk about each one of these in a little bit more, in a little bit more detail at this point. So affordability, I can't put food on the table. So part of this is, being involved and understanding. We're going to talk more and more in the class about budgeting and what happens when you make certain decisions around use of credit and that kind of thing. But, talk about getting involved. Are we really talking about food on the table, or I know a lot of people that have a Starbucks obsession, right? So think about a $5 Starbucks every day. Sorry, because my wife and I struggle with this all the time. If the two of us go, it could be $10, right? And so at any rate, that's something, take a closer look at your finances, and then understand where you can give and when you can give. Like I said, in week 5, we're going to be talking more about finances and where money goes. But, when we, there's a lot of international focus. Look at finances at GU because, we do those international trips, but, in a lot of environments, I mean, if you're rich, if you own 3 pairs of shoes, right? And so again, we can't compare the United States necessarily to what's going on in a third world country, but there's clearly perspective it can be a little bit different. So let's go. We're going to go to a verse out of Malachi. So bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there'd not be enough room to store it. So I don't want to get too deep in theology on this, but again, I actually heard a sermon on this once where the pastor said, try and outgive God. And so one of the things is that the root to a blessing can be giving. And so, so it's just something to consider. And then one more for you, since we're there, it's out of Proverbs. a generous person will prosper. Anyone who gives water will receive a flood in return. So again, generosity, this isn't to suggest that if you give, there's a thing out there called the prosperity gospel. If you give, you're going to get more back in terms of dollars. You may get more back in terms of blessings. And whatever those blessings might be in your life. So fakers, here's what I would say to it. If you're not comfortable, if you're kind of wondering what's going on, don't give. Guilt, sometimes we feel guilty that should we, where can we give, where can't we give? Be generous, but be generous with someone you trust. Have a little discernment. There's a lot of weird things going on in the world. And so but as I said, if you don't trust the individual, maybe you shouldn't give to them. And so again, if you have a passion for kids, and you're approached by a homeless person, you shouldn't necessarily feel guilty that you're not giving to that person because you've identified where your passion is. Generosity, remember, it's freely giving and sharing things that you value. And so it's not because I feel bad or because they asked me or it's, or I'm being guilted into it. It's you're freely giving things that we value for the benefit of others. All right, wasted money. This is a really good one because I think a lot of us see this and have had issues with it. So if you feel like somebody's going to use money for the wrong thing, maybe you can give them something besides money. So if you have gift cards to a place that doesn't, like if you're concerned that the person is going to use it to buy alcohol, maybe you have some small gift cards with you that for places that don't serve alcohol. And so I think that the point is, where is your heart moved? And do you feel led to give? And then again, there's a time to direct your generosity into the system for a longer term solution. But again, for things that come up every day, just look at it from a different perspective. And again, if you're feeling guilted, it's okay to say no. This one's a little bit more difficult, I think. All of us wonder if we're, I'll say, properly prepared. And, our culture talks about, we've got to have this big retirement, and we've got to have this, and we've got to have that. And the reality is saving is important. There's no doubt about it. But I think you can balance your savings with generosity. And think of it this way: if you lose your job next week, you might be in need of someone's generosity. And so, in a world that's truly generous, it's not as big a deal. If you have to depend on someone else's generosity. So, have faith in yourself, have faith in people and the people you run with and family and friends, and faith in God to get you through some of this stuff. But again, think about this. If we think of the world that we want to live in and generosity is a way of life, would you rather live in a self-centered world or a generous world? And I think we'd all like to believe we'd rather live in a generous world, and we'd like to be a part of that. The government. So here's what I would say. So taxes might be high, but is the government really capable, of solving the problems? How are they doing today? And so one of the things, so when you think about being able to say, is the government doing the right things? There are some great government programs, but in many cases, they might not be doing necessarily a great program. I mean, I think, I had the opportunity to serve in the Army after college, and I know a lot of people that have been in the VA system, and, generally speaking, it's okay. But I don't think anybody would say it's kind of a world-class approach to, to healthcare or anything like that. And so, just think about it. Can the government solve all these problems? And I think one of the other things that we could consider is, again, being generous in an area where the government is not being helpful or generous, perhaps. So at any rate, government. Small numbers, small amounts don't matter. Well, I would really suggest to you that generosity, if each of us was giving $10, is pretty powerful, right? Or what if 200 million Americans give $50? Again, that kind of comes out to pretty much $1 billion if I think about it. And so, could you give $50 a couple times a year? Well, again, if everybody did that or had the ability to do that, they would far surpass what Mr. Gates could do. So I think that we should be thinking more about what we can be giving, again, outside and separate from what other people are doing. Again, if you think about it, are we giving up those, coming back to that definition of generosity, what are we willing to give up freely for the benefit of others, regardless of, what a Bill Gates or a Warren Buffett or, Jeff Bezos at Amazon might do. Again, on a little bit more on small amounts. And so, what difference does my $50 make when we give away billions of dollars to other countries for foreign aid to help their people? And again, I'll make a pitch for, last week I mentioned the Poverty Inc. video. It's really, and a couple of links on how to get to it, and it's in your class packet. Really a great thing to look at, where the problems are in the way we give aid today around the world. So again, how well is foreign aid working? Who gets the benefits? And again, if you think about the perspective of if you can give $50 to a family, maybe somewhere in Central Africa, and they can start a farm or start to get some livestock, that might mean more. That certainly might mean more than some big government program that maybe never makes it to that particular town or village. All right, they're all crooks. How do we deal with that? I just don't trust charities. You know what? You're right. So again, we've seen this time and time again. So that's why we say, do the research, get involved, and learn how you can use the resources that you have and get to an organization you want to get it to. And again, this is exactly the point, one of the major points behind GU. Is it a quality organization? Are they having an impact in the world? Are they having an impact in your sphere of influence, things that you're passionate about? So again, do the research. I'll also say, don't be guilted into it, right? So at any rate, there's a lot of good information out there. So
Bill, is there an organization that oversees, when there's like a flood or a hurricane or something like that, and you see tons of people saying, please donate to this cause, this cause, this cause. Is there anybody that oversees like those places that are reaching out, and can you check in with that organization to see if it's a legitimate like charity?
Let me take that question, Bill.
Okay.
A perfect example right now is Lebanon, and it's just a kind of a once every 100 years disaster, and so you'll be getting 20, 30 different appeals from all kinds of people. So the question is really a good question, Darren. One thing we do as GU is we try we say ask us, and we'll tell you what we think as far as maybe one or two source or places to give your money where it ends up in Lebanon and helping people, because it's so complicated in places like that. So one thing we did as GU is we provide opportunity for people to give $60, and that buys a food box for a family for a month in Lebanon right now. But it's a great question because it happens all the time. There's a disaster every 3 weeks. And one of the things I get on Mr. Bray's case about is, you'll see in our stuff here, we'll bang on the Red Cross a little bit. And I always encourage Mr. Brands, I said, instead of like telling us who not to give to, tell us who we can give to so we can help the people in the tornado, in the flood, in the whatever the disaster is, so people have a chance to give away their money well. So we try to help you. We also try to give you the tools where you can, you know, do the research yourself because you have all the information we've given you. That's a great question. And it's so pertinent to what's going on, especially in the Lebanon example right now.
Yeah, so again, not to be telling, I'll say stories, all the bad stories that are out there, but let me try and share just a quick video. Hopefully you guys. So again, there's plenty of information out there. Are you guys starting to see a video?
Iron Mike Tyson is back for the
Sorry, we have to watch an ad.
ultimate showdown.
Dad, your arm's too big.
Well, I've been working out, son.
Shark Week's main event, Tyson versus Jaws, Sunday, August 9th on Discovery.
Well, as many of you may know, CNN senior investigative correspondent Drew Griffin and his producer David Fitzpatrick have spent more than 3 years exposing a wide array of fraudulent charities across the country. Their reporting has resulted in lawsuits and eventually settlements against some of those charities, and now a crackdown that the Federal Trade Commission is calling historic. Today, the Commission and the Attorneys General of all 50 states filed court papers alleging, quote, a massive nationwide fraud on the part of 4 so-called cancer charities that have been the focus of much of Drew Griffin's reporting. Now, these 4 charities are based in Knoxville, Tennessee, and Mesa, Arizona, and they're controlled by a single family. Here's Drew Griffin keeping them honest.
We called them some of the worst charities in the U.S., and they responded with silence.
Don't turn your camera on me, okay?
Shutting doors in our face.
If you have any other questions, please send them to her email.
Okay, my question. Mr. Reynolds?
Even giving us the finger.
Stop a second. No, where are you going, Mr. Reynolds?
The question they wouldn't answer, where is all the money? 2.5 years later, we now have a pretty good idea.
This is an historic moment.
A federal investigation has found $187 million raised in donations to 4 separate cancer charities has largely gone not to cancer survivors, not to cancer research, but somewhere else entirely. Scammers and fundraisers. If you gave a dime to the Breast Cancer Society run by James Reynolds Jr., the Cancer Fund of America run by James Reynolds Sr., the Children's Cancer Fund of America run by Reynolds Sr.'s ex-wife Rose Perkins, or the Cancer Support Services run by Kyle Effler, you are not going to like it.
This is just about as bad as it can get, taking money away from cancer victims.
In a massive crackdown on this family of charities, the Federal Trade Commission and attorneys generals from all 50 states have announced 2 of the charities will be dissolved. The complaint also includes potential fines totaling $136 million, and in explicit detail have outlined how donations for cancer charities were spent instead on luxury lifestyles. The personal spending, says Jessica Rich with the FTC's Bureau of Consumer Protection,
no limits. Cars for the individual defendants and others working with the company.
Again, so there's plenty of examples of bad ones out there, and as we like to talk about, you know, doing the work, doing the research, understanding who's doing what. I think one of the key things is, you know, if you're asking questions, and again, people aren't interested in talking about what's going on in their charity, within their nonprofit, within their NGO, it's probably somewhat of a red flag. And so, you know, again, just kind of keep it in mind as we go through this. They're not, you know, people are involved and money's involved. So, unfortunately, in some instances, that can be a bad combination. All right. So we'll go back into a couple more objections. We'll talk a little bit about personal entitlement as opposed to how people feel about entitlement. Let's see, let's go to this. Back to share. All right, so I'm entitled. I work hard for my money. I deserve to keep it. You know, so some things just to think about here. You know, people that are in adverse circumstances, you know, or they born into it, do they deserve the situation they're in? You know, what if everyone in the world was greedy, or versus what if everyone in the world was generous? Which one would you want to? Which one would you rather live in? So, interestingly enough, in a couple of surveys, this is the #1 reason that people give for not giving. That's right. That was another terrible statement, or not well thought out. But at any rate, pull this back up. Any questions or comments there? We'll keep rolling. All right, we're going to do another discussion point. Think about the top 5 things that enable you to earn a living, and write them down. Now, this should be, again, your ability to make money, not how you make your money, but your ability to make your money. Top 5 reasons. Audience participation. Anybody have any?
I say education.
Very good one.
The availability of jobs around me. What's there?
Health.
Any others?
I would say probably background, or just your networking or generational, what you grew up around.
Very good.
I was going to add opportunity, which kind of goes with what Jen was saying.
Agree.
Your skills.
Well, here are some. Was there another one? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Your skills.
Definitely. So here are some of the main factors. So you know, where you were born. You know, if you were born in an area of deep poverty, and you know, I think of Central Asia or maybe India, where you know there's a tremendous number of people born into poverty, and very difficult to kind of get out of that. Who your parents were. Were you healthy as a kid? Were you able to take advantage of the educational opportunities that you received?
Hey,
And
Bill,
again, go
don't
ahead.
forget to share your screen.
Oh, sorry. Ha.
That's why they paid me the big.
That's why we work together, right? Sorry about that. All right. How much opportunity did you have, and how much control? I think this is really a key thing, right? How much control do we really have over all of the things in our lives? And so, you know, again, that early childhood education we think is critical. So if we were to, again, talk about this kind of concept of entitlement a little bit more, I don't want to give to him because he'll become dependent on the charity. And so the answer is it certainly can be a risk, okay? So it's important to handle it properly. And again, different organizations are, you know, going to be handling things differently. And so you probably all have seen this. If you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you fed them for a lifetime. And then I think that the negative corollary is that if you teach a man to beg for a fish, he'll always beg for a lifetime. So, and again, when you watch the Poverty Inc. video, you'll see some pretty interesting unintended consequences of nonprofits and governments, right, trying to do the right thing, but actually hurting the local economy. So entitlement, what is it? Oh, lost my screen. What is it? It's the notion that people have a right to a particular benefit without earning it. And it's an attitude that can become prevalent. And again, we're really talking about it from the perspective of I've really have a right to keep what I want or what I've earned. And so it can be dangerous. And so, you know, if you're a giver, you may say, I'm entitled to keep this money, like we've been just talking about, right? I earned it, it's mine, why should I share? And a recipient might say, I'm entitled to have my needs met. And so there are some good entitlements. And I think, again, we want to come back to the concept of, you know, I want to choose how I give my money, and I want to give it money, time, talent, right? Because I think it's really important that we look at all three things, and that how do we want to be generous? How do we want to be generous in what we're doing? So, let's see what else we got. We're rolling up towards the end of this section. So I want to figure out how I want to close this part out. You know, I think, again, we all look at some of the negatives around what we'll call entitlements. And again, I think we have to kind of come back to the concept of we want to live in a generous world, or we want to live in a not a generous world. And so, you know, the problem in some cases is that well-intentioned programs sometimes can create, again, indirect consequences that people weren't looking at. And so we really have to say that, you know, there are some good programs out there, but again, we really want to look at it from the perspective of how are our programs impacting people in our communities? How are our programs making people, helping people get out of a situation that they may have been in before? So, questions, comments, agreements, disagreements? You guys almost ready for a break? I got a thumbs up, a couple of thumbs up. I'm all over that. So, all right, look, let's take, it's 25 after.
Okay, we're good.
All right, folks, we're back. So this next session, we're going to be talking a lot about poverty around the world. I'm going to come off sharing for just a second because I want to see kind of as how many people have had a chance to watch the Poverty Inc. videos already?
I have.
Okay.
Also, if you can turn on your video, we'd like to have you on video, just so you know.
Yeah, so we will, I'm going to emphasize that. We're going to discuss that at the beginning of the next class. It is about an hour long, so you have to, you know, set aside some time for it, but it's definitely, I think it's definitely worthwhile, you know, to do that. So we're going to be talking about poverty and primarily this week's discussion, or this class's discussion, will have much more of an international feel to it. But what we're going to do is go back to the 990s, because we had a couple of requests from earlier. So let me go up on the chat there. So Sheila asked about Wings Foundation. So we'll look at that one first. And then, let's see. And then Monique was the next person that asked and she suggested Project PAVE. So we'll look at those two next. And before we kind of get into this next section, I want to make sure I have my copy of my 990, my blank 990s. So bear with me a sec. Of course, I don't know what I did with them.
If you have your 990, show me your 990, because that really makes me happy. There you go. A couple people got them.
All right, love it. I really don't. I had a whole bunch of these things printed out so that I would not have to look for them. There we go. So I reorganized in between classes. So that's what happens when you reorganize. You organize yourself out of organization. All right. So I'm going to come back to, we're going to go back to GuideStar real quick. And we will look first at, let's see, Wings Foundation. Here we go.
Also, let me see you wave at me if you logged into GuideStar to check it out.
Okay. Sheila, is it this one, Wings Foundation in Lakewood, Colorado? I'm going to assume yes. I couldn't hear you. You might still be muted.
Oh, yeah, I am still muted, but that is it. I was not. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let's kind of go through it. And again, as you can see, I mean, I think Jen made the comment that the 990 thing is difficult. And so it is. It's actually, I think it's maybe tedious. I think ultimately that, you know, if you use a 990 form, you can get through it pretty easily. But again, use this. We're just using this as a guideline for how, you know, GU is going to evaluate, you know, your research reviews. So here we are. So the Wings mission is to break the cycle and heal the wounds of childhood sexual abuse by providing education, advocacy, and support to support adult survivors, loved ones, providers, and communities. So let's kind of dig into it. So the first thing we're going to look at is program service revenue. Again, how much of their revenue comes from charging for stuff. And so we're going to look first at line 9. So program service revenue looks really pretty light, right? About almost $12,000. And then the total revenue is $636,000. So that's going to equate to what?
It's about 1.99%.
Yeah, so 2%, about 2%. So that's great. So the score there is going to be a score of 3. So now, let me get Karen back in here. We're going to go to page 7. Rather than scroll, I just jumped down there, and we see that Jennifer Stith is the executive director. She's making a little less than $100,000, and we'll go to the bottom of this one. And again, kind of where Dan was mentioning before, if you look down here at line 1D, that total, looks like she's probably the only paid person on staff. So again, nobody making $100,000, $170,000 or more, so they're going to score real well there. As we keep rolling through this, we'll go down now to page 9 on the statement of revenue. And the first thing we want to see is how much of their funding comes from government grants. And again, some government grant funding is fine, but you don't want it to be 100%. So we've got line 1H, which is, and 1E. So 1E, they are getting a fair amount of money from grants, so about $306,000. out of a total of 624. So
That's,
they're less than 50.
49%.
I was going to say less than 50%. So less than 0.6 is 3, or less than 60% is 3 points. So again, this might be the highest percentage so far. And again, I think here I would say to you that, look, that money, that's a good balance if you can get it, and keep things rolling. All right, so far so good. Sheila, is this kind of what you saw when you did this? All right. Come down to page 10.
Looking at 1B, Bill.
Yeah.
It's automatic.
1B, which is 0. So it's automatically going to be 3 points. Hey, Dan.
Yes.
Can I actually give you control for a second? I need to help Julie with something.
I'm not sure I can control your screen. I think just, you need like a minute or so?
Yeah, I need like 2 minutes. Sorry.
Okay, we're gonna
I'll be,
pause.
sorry, folks. I thought I'd get this done on the break. I'll be right back.
Okay, good. And Bill is back. Welcome back, Bill.
Hey, Dan,
Hey,
I have a
thanks,
question. I have a question, Dan.
Sure.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
On the slide deck, it has a slide that says the organization review document. And I couldn't find that thing in the email, and I couldn't find it. I saw the 990 scoring document. Is there an actual organization review document?
Yeah, get that from
There isn't, Jason, but we'll get you a example of a good one.
Well, also, I think your question
Sorry.
I guess I'm unclear. Do you guys have one or do you not have one?
No, we do. We do have a blank form, and make sure.
So pretty much everybody has been making up their own. There isn't necessarily a specific format.
Okay.
But we'll get an example out to everybody. It'll probably make it a little bit easier.
There is a blank form, Bill.